Welcome to TV on TV. I'm State Representative Tommy Vitolo. Today is Thursday, January 25th, and you're watching Brookline Interactive Group. We have a great guest today. We have David Pearlman, chair of the school committee, and we're going to get into all kinds of things related to the school committee, including how the committee communicates with the public, how they're thinking about mental health, and a big proposal to expand early ed and how they're going to pay for it. That was pre-recorded earlier this week. We're going to get to that after the flip. But of course, first, here on TV, the news. The United States Supreme Court will allow the federal government to remove razor wire at the Texas-Mexico border placed there by Governor Greg Abbott. Former President Donald Trump won the New Hampshire primary with about 55% of the vote. Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley came in second with the remaining 45%. President Joe Biden, a write-in on the Democratic ticket, won by a large margin. NASA has finally opened a canister of 4.6 billion-year-old dust. The administration has been struggling to open the canister for months, and the contents include some of the oldest material in the solar system. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey unveiled a municipal package on Friday designed to allow cities and towns to generate additional revenue by increasing local option taxes on meals and lodging. Yesterday, the governor released her proposed annual state budget. The first step in a long journey, her proposal increases spending on the MBTA, healthcare, and education. Without an increase in direct tax revenue, those expenditures would be funded by one-time sources and cuts elsewhere in the operating budget. MCI Concord, a 150-year-old state prison housing approximately 300 inmates, is slated to close later this year. The prison employees and inmates will be transferred to other state correctional facilities. The Brookline Department of Public Health and Human Services has provided some tips on how to stay safe during the recent cold weather. Those tips include wearing layers when going outside, staying dry, removing extra layers when you feel too warm, and avoiding getting gasoline or alcohol on your skin while de-icing or fueling your car or snowblower. Brookline police reported that they are looking for two people who shoplifted at the TJ Maxx on Harvard Street after brandishing a knife. Yesterday was the first day for Brookline residents to declare their intent to run for local office. Several people have already pulled papers to run for townwide offices, including select board and school committee. Folks, that's the news for today. I encourage you to stay tuned for the flip side, where we get into it with David Pearlman, chair of the school committee. And welcome back to TV on TV. As promised, I've got one of the most important people in local government with us today. I've got David Pearlman, the chair of the school committee. David, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Tommy. Glad to be here.
Listen, I know the school committee might well be the hardest working committee in town. You have meetings almost every night that go on for hours. You have subcommittee meetings. You've got these sort of, working with school administration, working with finance. There's so much going on, to say nothing of the fact that you're focused on thousands and thousands of school kids and what they all need. You stay busy, no question about it. For the benefit of the folks at home, though, what have you been doing your whole life? How did you end up chair of the school committee? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I've been living in Brookline since I was 4 years old. I am a pre-K through grade 12 graduate of the public schools of Brookline. I went to Pierce for preschool. That was in the days before they called it BEEP. They called it transition to kindergarten back then. After my 1 year of preschool at Pierce, I then attended the Lincoln School for kindergarten and first grade. My family then moved to Coolidge Corner, where I attended what was then known as the Devotion School from second grade through eighth grade, and then 4 years at Brookline High School. After graduating from high school, I stayed in Brookline. I attended Brandeis University for college, and then I attended Boston University School of Law for law school. Upon becoming an attorney, I went into child welfare law. Specifically, I work in abuse and neglect cases where there is DCF involvement, where DCF sometimes will get involved in a family due to some concerns that arise around, it can be substance use, it can be housing instability, there can be mental health concerns, there could be occasionally physical abuse or sexual abuse taking place. And my role is to represent the mother, the father, or one or more of the children in the case. And what I do, in addition to representing them in court and all that entails, such as filing briefs, et cetera, and arguing in front of judges and litigating some legally arcane matters at times, is to try to help those families with the underlying issues that led to DCF involvement and in many instances led to separation of their families. And so I become a strong advocate for my clients in trying to get them their stable housing, in trying to get them the right medical treatment or psychological treatment that's going to help them be in a better position so that the family can reunify. And where it's not possible to reunify the family, which does sometimes happen sadly, I try to get the child into at least a good home. And that can be with a relative, or it can be with a neighbor sometimes, a family friend. Occasionally, it's with someone who's not initially known to the child. But over time, with a lot of support services in place, it works out. And so I deal with a lot of emotionally difficult cases and people who are suffering a great deal. But I do find it to be a tremendously rewarding job, and it is very satisfying to try to help get children into better circumstances.
And you yourself are a father fairly recently.
That is right. I have an almost 7-month-old son now. I love being a father. I'm enjoying him quite thoroughly, and lots of late nights and waking up in the middle of the night for feedings, but that comes with the territory, and I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, and he'll get better at it over time, and that'll work itself out. So the rumors are true. You didn't get outside of Route 128 until you were 25 years old.
That's right. Yes.
But now my understanding is you're actually all over the state.
I
Working on.
am. So I practice in Boston and Springfield, in Worcester. I also am licensed in New Hampshire, so I go to court in Nashua and Manchester, in Concord, and I practice at both the trial court level as well as the appellate level.
Well, that sounds like it keeps you busy and probably get a few miles on the car as well. I want to, so for folks who don't know or don't remember, school committees elected. There are 9 school committee members, 3 are elected each year. David, as the chair, how does the school committee make sure that it's hearing from all of the different constituencies, right? Of course, students, parents, but also faculty and staff, taxpayers, neighbors, right? There's a lot of people who somehow or other care something about the schools. How do you make sure you're hearing from all of them?
Well, we engage in a lot of outreach efforts. So we regularly will attend PTO meetings at each of our schools. We will regularly send out surveys, and not just to parents of current students, but also to stakeholders in the community more broadly. So we will send out our surveys to various town committees. We will post our surveys to the town meeting listserv. And for those of you who are not familiar with the town meeting listserv, that's essentially where all of our elected officials and executive officers are on a same email listserv, essentially, so that we can communicate with one another. And so we will post surveys in there so that all of our town meeting members will be familiar with what's taking place at the schools, and will have an opportunity to provide us with input and presumably reach out to their constituents to receive their extended input as well. And we take that feedback very seriously, and we try to incorporate what we hear from these different groups into our proposals and into our strategic planning.
I'm imagining you also hear quite a bit from individual parents. How do you manage the sheer volume of feedback? Because I'm sure it's extensive.
So we do get quite a few emails, and the way that we used to handle it was a little bit difficult. So before I became chair, a lot of parents would complain that they weren't necessarily getting responses. And I think the reason for that is with 9 school committee members, we didn't always know whether someone was answering someone. And so a change that we made fairly recently, starting last year to be more specific, is we would appoint a school committee member each week. So the 9 of us rotate in terms of answering emails that we receive. And we may not always be able to answer the question that's posed to us right away, but at minimum, what we do is try to direct the person to an individual within the school department who will be able to answer that question. And if that individual doesn't get back to the parent or concerned constituent in timely fashion, then usually we'll remind the person, could you please answer this question? It'll be much appreciated. And we always, at a minimum, will provide an answer indicating that we have forwarded the message to someone who's in the strongest position to answer, or that we ourselves are going to undertake sort of the research to look up what the issue is and to provide a thoughtful answer. And I find this has been a very effective model because now emails get answered and people definitely appreciate being heard.
Oh, for sure. And certainly, I am sure there are times when um, you having the context of sort of the breadth and depth of different problems or concerns for individual school children, you can go to say, well, this one, that's probably not a really big deal. It'll work. So, but for the individual parent, they don't have that context, right? And so we care, speaking for myself, and I care about all of the children of Brookline. I certainly care about mine, and I know a little more about mine than the others. And so I expect, parents are doing their best. Sometimes they might be a little overbearing. I suspect that's true sometimes. You don't have to say it, I will. But it is. I'm glad to hear that because I know it had been a problem. People sort of send an email and they feel like they went into a black hole. So that responsiveness under your leadership, I'm glad to hear about it. And then you do surveys? Tell me a little more about like surveys and sort of more broadly hearing from folks.
Well, just if I can get back to something you said a moment ago regarding that sometimes parents can be overbearing. I prefer to see it as parents being very passionate and very invested in how their children are doing. And I actually don't mind when people are, overbearing. I actually see that as a plus because it means that they care. I would be more concerned if they didn't care. And so I actually like the zeal that we have in our community, and I appreciate it, positive or negative. It means you care. I prefer caring to apathy. In terms of your question regarding surveys, so we've been doing surveys as a part of our various reviews that we're undertaking now, which is also dovetailing with the budget process as well as our strategic plan. So we have surveys around our reviews on middle school, around our reviews in literacy, special education, world language, social studies curriculum, equity, but also we perform surveys with our students. And we want to know how our students are feeling and how they are doing. And we ask them questions quite frequently, anonymously, of course. And we want to hear from them how much time do they spend in front of screens? How much homework do they have? Are they smoking? Are they drinking? Do they feel a sense of belonging to their school community? Is there an adult that they trust at school? And that's very helpful information for us because as we are thinking about how to allocate certain line items within our budget, as we're thinking about strategic plans, about where we need to dedicate more resources, both in terms of human capital as well as the financial capital, it's important for us to have that data so that we're making informed decisions rather than just guessing at it and meeting our students where they are at and where the need is present. And when the surveys are for parents or for whichever target group we're reaching out to with our survey, that's always the goal, so that we can make an informed, evidence-based decision.
And so we know the greater public, you probably knew long before us, the greater public, I think, started to appreciate the importance of mental health and community for school children beginning in 2020, right? So COVID, March 2020, and there's a lot more isolation, and probably for school children, even more screen time than prior, because like we're on Zoom right now, or there's a lot of Zoom going on. And so, it's not just reading and writing and arithmetic. There's all of these other needs or important parts of our children and frankly, our faculty and staff as well. How is the school committee sort of thinking through mental health and these social concerns for our school children, and kind of where are you at right now, and where are you going? How do you frame that conversation?
So returning from the pandemic, we significantly increased resources in the area of social emotional learning, which includes guidance counseling. And so we have many more guidance counselors than we did previously. And that has been a tremendous help in providing individualized attention to our students who felt some sense of social isolation, especially during the pandemic. And we've been very highly committed to maintaining a lot of resources in that area of social emotional learning and with our guidance counseling to ensure that our students have the necessary supports in place so that they feel comfortable, so that they feel reintegrated into the more traditional school community of being in person with their peers and with their teachers, et cetera. And we're finding that from our survey results, getting back to that our students are starting to feel a higher sense of belonging with their community. So those numbers are ticking upward in the right direction, which is very encouraging.
Now, I know that, so my kids are in 3rd and 7th grade, so I'm sort of still learning about all of the complexity of the public schools, but I certainly do know that the schools have a variety of programs that are not sort of the traditional, like arithmetic for every student, or English language arts for every student, everything from like world languages to the RISE program, these special ideas and programs that are designed for certain kinds of kids in certain circumstances, to really round out, to meet them where they're at, right? To do these other things, because not every kid just fits in every box perfectly. How are those working? How do you know if they're working? Do we have the right programs? How do you and the school committee manage all of those things that maybe those of us who are 45 or 65 or 85, that those things didn't even exist when we were in school? How do you manage all of that?
So that's one of the main reasons that we have these frequent program reviews, so that we can get data close to in real time that look at various metrics to see whether the programs that are currently existing are functioning well, if we're fully optimizing the resources that we dedicate to these various programs, and if we're achieving the results that we're looking for as a school committee and as a district more broadly. And in doing that, we just to give a specific example, so we sent out a survey to high school students regarding how many hours of sleep they have, and we saw that about 1 in 10 of our high school students are reporting that they sleep for under 5 hours a night. Well, that's very little, and research shows that especially younger people need to be getting a lot more sleep than that, and it's actually more than the standard 8 hours for adults. And so as a result of that data point, we've been looking at whether we should be adjusting the amount of homework that is given, whether we should be starting the day at different times if that There are a lot of complexities around that because of the union contract, et cetera. But we are looking at how can we alleviate some of these pressure points that we're seeing in these survey results and in the data from program reviews, so that we can really put students in their best possible position to succeed. And so that's why data gathering is critically important, because that's what allows us to make the right decisions in terms of serving our students and essentially providing for them uh, and their individual needs. So as you were saying moments ago, Tommy, that we don't have a one size fits all mentality, and there are a lot of specialized programs, but at the same time, we do care a great amount about inclusion, which means that we don't want students to be deprived of certain experiences that other students would have. And so the inclusion model is also critically important in our schools, and we try to minimize to the extent possible, as appropriate, the amount of separation that some students have. And so it's important to try to balance that out. And fortunately, our teachers are supremely talented and they engage in differentiated teaching all the time, where they will go to each student individually. And obviously, our teachers are in the best position to really know how each and every one of their students performs and what each and every student has in terms of needs. And so it's really great to see that dynamic. When I go into classrooms and visit our students and our teachers, I'm really amazed to be able to observe that in real time.
And as you said, there's just, I mean, we've got 8 K-8 schools plus the high school, which is a campus. I mean, there's a lot going on. Do the 9 school committee members, are they, sort of hunched over the spreadsheets, crunching the results, or do you have support? I mean, surely the 9 school committee members aren't doing this on their own.
Right. Well, I am going to give a lot of credit to the chair of our finance subcommittee, Mariah Nobrega. She does do a lot of that work on her own, but we absolutely do have support from the central office administration. So we have a deputy superintendent of administration and finance who provides a lot of this data for us. We have a deputy superintendent of teaching and learning, and sort of think of that as the top curriculum person in the district. She provides for us a lot of this information. And then there are several curriculum coordinators. They gather this data. We have an Office of Educational Equity that also gathers some of this data. So it's definitely a collaborative team effort. They work with us, they provide information, they advise us. And many of us on school committee, we have our strong opinions, but we definitely like to work collaboratively with the staff and the upper administration.
So we talked mostly today about K-12, but I am also interested in our little learners and our small ones. And I happened to notice in a document recently that there's a proposal to add a pretty substantial number of educators for our youngest students. So what am I seeing there? What do you got cooking?
So we are looking to extend BEEP, which is our preschool program, to full day. And that's really exciting for multiple reasons. One, studies clearly show that if a student begins school at the preschool level, that student is going to achieve at a much higher level than those who just enter in kindergarten. And that's in large part because being in that school atmosphere and learning how to read at a younger age and those critical building blocks for the years ahead in school, those critical skills of reading and math, et cetera, the earlier you start that in an organized setting, the better the student outcome is going to be. And for our families in town, it's a real struggle financially to try to balance out the needs of providing for their kids when they're at work. And currently, when BEEP is a half day, that means that they have to look elsewhere to other programs in order to fill in those gaps for when the parents may not be available. And so by having full day BEEP, Our children are going to benefit by having more hours in school, starting earlier. Parents benefit because now their kids are receiving that more structured learning at an earlier age and for a longer period of time. And also, this is cost neutral in the sense that we don't have to go to the taxpayers to ask for any more money in order to fund this. This is a self-sustaining program through tuition. And as a state, we're actually moving in this direction more broadly. There's often talk of having universal preschool. And so Brookline is very much ahead of other communities in trying to move in this direction of expanding availability of preschool and trying to help bring costs down so that it's more accessible to a greater number of our residents.
Yeah, in fact, at the State of the Commonwealth address on Wednesday night, Governor Healy talked about her proposal to bring pre-K. She wants to start with the gateway cities, which I think is fair and reasonable. There's certainly substantial need there, but I think you're right that the school committee sees that you see this is where we're going. We as a society understand that pre-K is important for the success of students. It's also important for parents, right? For most of us, our housing costs, if we're unlucky, our medical costs are the highest costs, right? That's terrible. For many of us, our housing costs are our highest cost. But if you've got kids in daycare, that's your highest cost. And to the extent that we're giving parents another option at this point, and maybe in the future, I hope in the future, the state is helping pay for that option to drive down the cost for parents. It makes our community all the more livable for parents who are juggling careers and kids and transportation. So I'm really excited about it. My kids didn't go to BEEP precisely because my wife and I work all day, and BEEP was not all day in the places that we could get to. It just didn't work for us. And that was unfortunate for us. So I think this is a really big deal. I hope that you'll get out there and tell folks about it. I'm sure they will be really excited about it. David, unfortunately, we're just about out of time. I'm really grateful for your work as chair of the school committee. I'm thankful that you were able to come on the show. I know you're going to keep hearing from folks in your surveys, in the emails, and so forth. And thanks for coming on. And folks watching at home, thanks for watching TV on TV here on Brookline Interactive Group. And we'll see you next week. David, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.